Hey guys, so I wanted to give you this video presenting the new options for Gazeta. Hey guys, so I wanted to create some branding options for Gazeta, and these are the options that I came up with so far. I'm going to go through just the 12 of them just briefly before I go through each one individually. So a big part of this was about maintaining the brand that you had before. Obviously, a big part of this process of branding or rebranding is to keep something that's familiar to your target audience so that you don't rip the rug from out under them. Brands that do this very well, Coca-Cola, if you go and you look back at them, they've changed and evolved, over the years, but they did it in ways that didn't make people feel like they've changed 100%. Brands that did it the wrong way, brands like Pepsi, went from, something that people were connected to something completely different. And then the backlash, of course, was that people felt, like they were connected to this brand. So without further ado, obviously the first way that I started off doing this was by creating some sketches of different versions of the G. And that was one of the ways that I felt actually worked, right? So the G on an angle was also with the inverse N within the negative space. And this was something that I saw as kind of a great, the whole GN hidden in the symbology. And then finding a way to repurpose the three elements here, of course, within the Brazilian flag colors. So a big part of that was actually by looking at overall Gazeta means newspaper and the whole idea of keeping the tradition and the heritage of Brazil and the news that you guys tell within these colors. But how can we integrate that within the typography and the iconography? And this was my way of doing that, right? And the way, even in terms of the triangular shapes coming together, even those are kind of a homage to the printing process being digitized, right? And coming in that evolution where you're seeing it's almost, this transitional kind of thing, and it's even blending in with the overall colors and everything. This, of course, even felt more like a stamp and a mark, but I felt that, this was also kind of a way to obscure the overall G and N. So I started to actually take the literal G, and then if you cut the G here, you can see that it actually starts to evolve into a G and an N, the N being at the top, of course, and integrating also these elements again of the flag of Brazil within there was another key part of this. And, ultimately, these are different variations of that, right? So that's kind of the synopsis of it. But let's look at it in terms of application. So one way that I started this process as well was just applying it to the newspaper front to see how it would feel. And of course, I don't think that this was the most impactful, just because I felt that this on the newspaper front, as much as I love this, it felt like if it removed too far from where you guys were. The iconography in this one was actually a lot more secondary, right? A lot more hidden. And the Gazeta being large and prominent really give impact. So I started to look at even not moving away from the condensed kind of font, but also, bringing something that was more modern and striking in terms of just standing tall without any kind of angular shape and having any kind of angle be within the icon here to the left. I started to also work on bringing, since that to me was also, a great option, but I also felt like, lost the impact of what I saw here. When I brought this to the forefront to be first, this was experimental. Very simple, but also, the impact, that was there before. I felt that definitely felt more bold and impactful. But I wanted to also see this work, that if you took the G by itself, in this day and age with apps and, favicons on the websites and everything, I wanted this to be able to stand on its own, right? So that's where I came to this solution here visually. And then as time went by, I evolved it even more. So this here even feels more like an arrow. These colors are now radiating from the G, and it brings kind of a modernity and a kind of poise to the overall look. This one is a little bit more abstract in terms of how things are coming up, but it's an idea of building on top of a stable ground, and the idea of growth and a progression. And I think that that's also very impactful. This one as well, where the spacing of the triangles coming out from the G, I thought was also very nice. But I also wanted to go back to seeing as well if we did move away from the condensed kind of typeface, how it would feel. So this is an option within that space. And then this is one that goes back to one of the first typefaces that I did. This time, instead of having the icon precede the logo mark, I'm sorry, the logo mark preceding the logo type, right? So having this integrated within there, it does have a bit more impact than, let's say, the first one that I did, which essentially took that same kind of typeface, but you know, it had it smaller because of the icon in front of it. So I did feel like this was a lot more of a stronger push. And coming on to the end here, where we have the G and the N, where this can stand alone, there's something about this that also started to feel a little bit more like we're having like almost like a character within this kind of G. And then lastly, I kind of evolved it to come back essentially almost full circle to where we began, right? So in a way, this is actually really kind of taking the first iteration of your brand and really kind of coming to a solution that's a lot cleaner, a lot more, you know, in terms of imbuing knowledge and, you know, even history within this, the G and the N kind of being seen together within something that people were even still familiar with. And there's even a slight hint of an arrow that's bringing it full circle around. So it's almost like this here is really kind of its own self-contained evolutionary brand here. So I'm not saying that this is the one that you guys have to go for. All of these I want you to take into consideration, but it's definitely the path that I think would be a great step forward for Gazeta. So let me know your thoughts, guys. Thank you so much for your time in this presentation. Bye-bye.